Good evening, members, and good evening, everyone else. Welcome to this meeting of Plans East. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. Please could I also remind members of the public who have registered to speak that they will be admitted to the meeting at the appropriate time. Please be aware that if technical difficulties interrupt the meeting that cannot be overcome, I may need to adjourn the meeting. Item 2 is advice to public and speakers. I have no doubt that that's already happened. Vivienne?
Yes, it has, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of our last meeting, pages 9 to 14. May I take them as a true record that they can be signed in due course?
Yep. Okay,
thank you very much. 4 is apologies for absence.
Chairman, I've received apologies from Councillor Macready and apologies for lateness from Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Okay. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? I saw someone. Councillor John Phillip first.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a declaration of interest to do with my time as planning portfolio holder for item number 10. My officers had a meeting with the applicant, the applicant's agent. When I was present, I made no expression at the time of which way I would go if there was a resubmission of the application. But for the reasons of transparency, I'll declare it as a non-prejudicial interest.
Okay, thank you very much. Did I see someone else with their hand up? No, I don't think so. Okay, we will move on then. Number 6, any other business?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 7 is Epping Forest District Local Plan Submission Version Planning Policy Briefing Note, which we take notice of. Number 8 is site visits. Members are only too well aware that at the moment, if you ask for a site visit, the matter will simply be transferred straight to district development. We'll now go on to the planning applications, and the first one is number 9. I'm not quite sure who's actually going to deal with this. If I could just say that we have with us tonight several planning officers, and I'm not sure who's going to do it. We have Andrew Marks, Jerry Godden, and Suki Dadwar, and who is going to take item 9?
It'll be Suki Dadwar, Chairman, for
Okay.
item 9.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This item is for the retention of a single-storey wooden field shelter on the southern side of Manor Road. This slide shows the location plan with the site outlined in red. The application site is located within a field. It's contained within the larger site forming the Lambourne End Outdoor Leisure Centre. Please note that the plan on page 15 of the agenda and my report indicates that the area of the site is 88.32 square metres, but this figure is the area of the shelter footprint only. The whole site covers an area of around 1.4 hectares. Plans were amended during the course of the application to include the netting frame and area where the archery is to be played. This is the Google map of the site. This property here is Church House. This property here is Forest Lodge. The site's in Greenbelt. The plan shows the overshoot netting. So that's the overshoot netting and the field shelter. This plan shows you the elevations and roof plan of the shelter. It measures 18.5 metres long by 4.8 metres deep and has a maximum height of 2.5 metres. Materials include sage green painted timber boarding for the walls. This is a floor plan of the shelter. The applicant has confirmed that he will no longer use the store cupboards or areas for the storage of animal feed. They will instead be used for the storage of sports and activity equipment. The overshoot netting consists of a metal netting support frame measuring 30 meters long by 4 meters high. It will be used to catch misdirected arrows. The sizing is in accordance with Archery GB recommended overshoot distancing. This slide shows the photographs of the side and rear of the shelter. The Parish Council has objected on the grounds that the positioning of the shelter and the intended use by cattle. They have suggested that the shelter be moved to the opposite end of the field, away from local residents. The Parish Council also notes that the applicant has agreed that he would be happy to abide by a condition not allowing it to be used for cattle or as a feed store, and that the applicant would put up an electric fence around the shelter whenever animals were in the field. Concerns raised by neighbours include the fact that the development has occurred prior to obtaining planning permission. The field has not been used for grazing. The development should be relocated away from residential properties. It is inappropriate development in the green belt, harm from noise, smell and vermin, harm to the wider landscape, loss of view, designated recreational use, not farming, unsuitable location, and poses a health and safety risk. This slide shows the front elevation. Officers assessed the application and found that the proposal fell within exception B of paragraph 145 of the NPPF, as it is development for the purposes of outdoor recreation or associated essential small-scale buildings and other uses which preserve the openness of the green belt and do not conflict with the purposes of including land within it. This exception therefore permits limited facilities related to the pursuit of outdoor sports and recreation. It therefore, by definition, accepts a limited loss of openness to allow this type of development to happen. Sorry, I think I may have gone. Archery is a sport which can only be played in open countryside locations. The shelter and associated paraphernalia, as constructed, facilitates the use of the area for archery. The activity is consistent with the lawful use of the site as an outdoor recreation and educational facility. The built structures are of a reasonable size to carry out the activities they are intended for and are of a type one would expect within a countryside setting. The trees around the boundaries of the wider site also partially screen it from long views. The development therefore meets the requirements of local and national greenbelt policy. The nearest residential property, Church House, is approximately 50 metres away from the shelter. Whilst it's acknowledged that the field can currently lawfully be used for animal grazing, the use of the shelter for animal protection would intensify an unneighbourly use. It is therefore recommended, in line with the Parish Council's comments, that a condition should be attached to any permission requiring that the shelter should not be used for protection of animals and the storage of feed. This would then prevent it being used for activities which would be harmful to the amenity of neighbours as a result of smell and nuisance. This slide shows you the inside of the shelter. It contains a wooden bench for resting players and their carers. Its layout also demonstrates it will not be used to feed animals. Suggested conditions to control the development include: no permission is given to the shelter hereby approved to be used for the sheltering of animals for the storage of animal feed. The area designated for archery shall only be used for supplementary animal grazing between the months of February and March or September and November, when the archery facility is not in use. During the months of February and March or September and November, when the animals are using the field, an electric fence shall be installed around the field shelter. No more than 14 people plus staff shall be participating in archery at any one time on the site. The development hereby permitted shall be used for the activities related to archery and animal grazing only, and for no other purpose. Officers consider that on the basis that the development is appropriate development within the green belt and will not have an excessive adverse impact on neighbouring residential amenity over and above the current lawful use of the site. Permitting this development will also provide social, physical and psychological benefits for the users of the site. Therefore, the application has got a recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. We have two speakers on this application. The first one is Mrs. Patricia Price. Mrs. Price, you have 3 minutes.
Chairman, could we get these slides taken down first?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. If we can get Mrs. Price up.
I think Mrs. Price is on mute.
Ah. Yes.
She can't get her camera on earlier, but she could unmute.
I've unmuted.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Right. That's great. You have 3 minutes.
Shall I start again?
Yes, please, if you would.
My family and I have lived adjacent to this site for 40 years. The first I knew of this development was when an army of workers descended onto the site and started erecting a substantial structure. This continued, and the centre was advised by planning services that they needed a planning permission. Despite that, the centre continued to work on the development. They lodged an application for a shelter a year ago. They also started using the shelter for archery, despite the fact they did not have planning permission. They also erected a very large archery overshoot netting structure and had to be told that that also needed planning permission. The application a year ago, seen by neighbours for comment, did not even mention the overshoot structure. The above shows that the applicant has little regard for planning law and regulation and should be tightly controlled. Please note that the Parish Council rejected this application a year ago, but has not been given the opportunity to comment on the overshoot structure. Also, that my expert planning consultants, Paul Saggers Associates, have written a long letter stating why the original application should be rejected. The more recent erection of a tall 30-metre archery netting structure in the middle of the field represents a permanent blot on the landscape and a violation of the openness of the greenbelt. This is clearly visible from the road and is out of harmony with the surrounding countryside. Even though they have 50 acres, the applicants have put the shelter right next to a neighbour's house, so positioned as to cause maximum noise nuisance and loss of amenity, especially when loud hailers are used. This action is both unreasonable and unneighbourly. The applicant himself confirms that this facility will be in constant use. Thus, the Parish Council proposed a relocation of the shelter to the end of this very large field. It is surely totally unacceptable to mix animals and humans or to have animal feed stores in the building. The congregation of animals around a feed store would cause noise, odours, flies and vermin. Neither I nor my neighbours have seen animals in the field. The word existing stock fence should more accurately be termed very recently installed stock fence. No cattle should be allowed in the field. Indeed, as was also stated to the chairman of the Parish Council, at a site meeting held on the 14th of January with 2 parish councillors, the applicant stated he did not need to allow cattle to graze on this field. Sheep could graze there instead. If the committee are minded to accept this proposal, an appropriate condition should be stipulated. The applicant advises that the centre has been using the shelter for the past year without receiving any complaints. This does not seem to be a measure of likely noise nuisance in the future, given the limited activity at the site during COVID lockdown and the assertion that the shelter will in future be in constant use. The fact that local people have objected to this application must surely be an indication of their fundamental complaints. For the reasons set out above, I would urge the members of the committee to refuse this application.
Thank you very much indeed. Our second speaker is Mr. Rob Gaylor, who is the applicant. You also have 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman. The proposal being considered is located in a 6-acre field that is part of a 54-acre Lambourne End Centre site, which prior to 1926 was known as Young's Farm. Apart from being used for rugby pitches for a short period prior to 1995, the field has been managed as a hay meadow throughout this time. This has involved some livestock grazing, but leaving it to grow through the spring and summer in order to take a crop of hay in August. This has created a fantastic wildflower meadow of which we are very proud and keen to preserve. The centre provides a unique blend of activities and opportunities to help young people build their confidence, self-esteem, improve skills, generate a sense of achievement and raise their aspirations through a combination of adventure, farm and environmental activities. We aim to inspire people to make positive choices to benefit their lives and their communities. Visiting groups span a range of youth organisations, primary and secondary schools, community groups and other charitable organisations, referral agencies working with excluded children, niche young people, refugee groups, single parent groups and support networks for parents with disabled children. Each programme is bespoke and combines a variety of activities. One of the activities we currently offer is archery, which is hugely popular with visiting groups, but the requirements of the overshoot made it difficult to operate in its previous location. Our aim was to move up the archery to the hayfield where the activity could be conducted safely. To achieve this, we have stock fenced the field approximately 5 metres from the existing boundary fence. This has also created a fantastic path around the
I think our contact with Mr. Gaylor has been lost. I wonder if he's going to come back to us. We can't see anything at the moment. I think we seem to have lost him. Well, let me just, if I might, I just go, Councillor Phillip, I've got an electronic hand up. Is that held over from? Yes, it is. Okay. And
excuse me, Chairman.
Yes.
If you just give me a minute, I can finish out reading his statement.
Oh, if you would, please.
Because he sent the statement in. I just have to get it up.
Okay. If you could, that'd be most helpful.
Statement. No, I don't think he's actually sent one in.
Right.
No, he hasn't.
No, sorry.
Okay, all right. Could I just ask Councillor Holly Whitbread, you have your hand up. Do you have any declarations of interest?
Yes, which is why I've got my hand up. Sorry, I missed that part of the meeting, but I was here for the whole report. The applicant on this application is known to me through my portfolio role. I visited the centre in the summer to see one of our disabled activities, so non-pecuniary interest there. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, if we can't get our speaker back, the recommended decision is to grant permission with conditions. Councillor Brady, is this your ward, is it? Yep, and I see Councillor Rolfe would like to speak.
No, it's not my ward. So I have got one question for the officers, but I'll do that later.
Okay.
It's Councillor Rolfe's ward.
Right, apologies. Councillor Rolfe, would you like to start? You have to unmute. You have to unmute. Councillor Rolfe, you do have to unmute.
Councillor Rolfe, you're muted. Councillor Rolfe, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
The wonders of modern science. While we're waiting for Councillor Rolfe, would any other councillor like to speak at this point? I can't see everyone on one page, Jackie, or Vivienne. Vivienne, you'll have to help me.
Yeah, there's nobody else with their hand up.
Okay, Councillor Brady then, please.
Well, I was literally going, well, number one, I was going to ask, can the officers unmute Councillor?
No, he's unmuted now.
I can't see you at all, but can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now.
For some reason, the whole thing's disappeared, but I've got back and I pressed the mute button and it all disappeared. Anyway, I'm back in. Do I need to be seen at the moment?
No, we can see you.
Oh, you can see me. Okay, then. Well, I don't throw me completely, actually. I'm a bit concerned about this because I'm not concerned about the issue with the application. I'm fully supportive of this. Everybody has a great deal of in and around Lambourne has a great deal of faith in the work that Lambourne Outdoor Centre carries out on behalf of underprivileged children and handicapped children. Indeed, we use a lot of this in our own area. I cannot see that this is really anything. I would expect most people to want to support this because I think most of our members have heard of this if they haven't visited it. What I am concerned about is it all seems to be gone wrong tonight because I phoned the chairman of the parish council not an hour before we opened tonight. He couldn't come here, but he assured me that there was nobody coming from the parish council. And what's more, I knew that Mr. Price was going to speak. That was notified yesterday, or somebody was going to read his statement. It would appear that Mrs. Price has come here as a member representing the parish council. Well, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but he gave me the impression when I listened to her. What's more, I cannot help but feel that there's something wrong somewhere, because I was told that the parish council had withdrawn their objection. I had a lengthy discussion with the chairman the other day, and I phoned to check again that they couldn't send anybody to, or at least get them to attend tonight. And suddenly we find that Mrs. Price, who is a parish councillor, is there. But this is not with the authority, as I understand it, of the parish council. And I'm finding this whole process somewhat difficult to understand, because in fact, I don't know if the chairman or somebody can help.
Councillor Rolfe.
Yes, Jackie, could you jump in
Mrs.
there?
Price is speaking not as a councillor, she's speaking as an objector, so she's not speaking on behalf of the parish council.
Well, okay, I would like to, on behalf of the parish council, to register that they've told me only tonight that they have withdrawn their objections to this. So perhaps I'm wrong, but I don't see we can do it. But if Mrs. Price is not appearing as a parish councillor, then okay, that's fine. But she's just expressing a private view. But having said that, the reference was made on several occasions to the parish council. Okay, I can't add more than that. I fully support this, and I think I can speak from bitter experience, living as I do in a bungalow on the side of a field that had cattle in it years ago. Fortunately, the farmer gave up milking or milk production. But I can assure you that an archery thing will be less intrusive than cattle, which could then be placed there for the whole year. But and there's nothing we can do about that for them. Anyway,
I'm really sorry I got kicked out. I don't know whether I should be here for this bit of the meeting now, but I managed to get back in.
Ah, good. Well done, Mr. Gaylor. We lost you about halfway through. If you'd like to sort of complete about the last minute of your talk.
Okay, yeah. So to achieve moving the archery, we've stock fenced approximately 5 metres from the existing boundary fence, and also create a fantastic path around the outside, suitable for nature walks, orienteering, and pony and cart rides. It's the aim of the shelter the aim is to provide shelter for those people taking part in archery session from wind, rain, sun, somewhere safe to be seated when not shooting, and that's very important for so many of our disabled users. The netting is designed to catch any misdirect arrows to stop them entering the overshoot area, which means we can continue to take a hay crop and maintain the wildflower meadow. The entire field is surrounded by hedgerows and trees, which prevent it being visible to surrounding properties, as the photos shown have provided. Apart from a short stretch along Manor Road, where some of the old trees in the hedgerow have fallen, we have already planted new trees there, which will hopefully fill that gap. Following discussions with the planning officer regarding some of the concerns that have been raised by a neighbour, we are happy to confirm that the field has been fenced off, including whole overshoot. We only plan to use the shelter for archery and for people taking part in archery. We will have a maximum of 14 participants plus staff there at any one time. It's not a noisy session, and we have been using it for the last year, especially for supporting vulnerable and at-risk people during COVID. So it has been in reasonably constant use, and we have had no complaints so far. We do not want to use the shelter for feed storage, and we do not intend to let animals use it because it would render it unsuitable for purpose. As previously done, we would still at certain times, autumn and spring, graze animals in the field as part of good meadow management. This would not be done in late spring and summer when the archery shelter would be in constant use and we're growing the grass for a crop of hay, or in the winter when it's too wet. And as already said, even when the animals are in the field, we would electric fence off the shooting area and the shelter so that they don't churn it up. If we are unable to use this as field shelter, the only way for us to make meaningful use of that field would be to permanently graze livestock in there, which I believe is the main objection to the shelter. The shelter and the netting were erected without planning permission as originally following the Epping Forest outbuilding guidance. We didn't understand this to be necessary, but that was a misunderstanding for which we do apologise. I hope this statement adequately explains the purpose and proposal and addresses some of the concerns that have been raised. But I can confirm that Lambourne End Centre is committed to managing the site to enhance the biodiversity wherever possible and increase its environmental impact. It's fundamental to our work as an outdoor learning centre and our environmental education. We've planted over 2,000 trees on site over the last 15 years with young people visiting and have plans to plant many more. So I don't know how the procedure works.
I think I'm going to have to stop you there, Mr. Galo. I think you've had a good one.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor John Whitehouse, I think you're wishing to speak.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think in terms of the structures here, I mean, they are in line with what you'd expect for outdoor recreation, which is an appropriate use in the green belt. I mean, things like the overshoot screen, obviously it's longer, but if you think that, you know, rugby posts scattered around or, you know, other sort of the paraphernalia you get with outdoor recreation, it doesn't seem to me out of scale. I did have one query, which is more directed to the officers, really. I mean, it's the first time I've ever seen agricultural grazing described as an unneighbourly use. I mean, is this a new sort of planning, you know, ruling or policy? Or, I mean, the country must be pepper potted with areas where grazing is adjacent to residential areas. And I'm just sort of curious about that comment or assertion.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Suki, would you like to answer this?
I think it can be subjective, but I think the number of cattle are there could be noise, there could be stray cows going close to the boundary of their property. So that, from that point of view, that they may be concerned about it. I'm a town person, so I don't live in the countryside, so you're probably better able to see the benefits or problems of cattle, but I would have thought that they would be noisy sometimes, and if they are close and doing things they shouldn't do, it may cause problems, chewing the fence or things like that. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. The objector mentioned that they would be happier if the shelter was on the other side of the field, and that was also what the parish council originally said in their objection. I just wondered why that particular position was chosen and whether there are reasons why it can't be on the other side of the field. Obviously, it's a problem to remove it now, but it is retrospective. But, you know, why was that position chosen?
Well, unfortunately, we're having to deal with the application as it is rather than as we might have wished it. So that isn't actually part of our consideration. I take your point, but it's not something we can consider tonight. Councillor Phillip, I think you have your electronic hand up.
wondering whether you wanted to go back to Councillor Brady first, since she's been waiting patiently.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brady?
Well, mine is just really to carry on from this Councillor Whitehouse's comment, and just to ask the officers, it seems very strange that we've got specifically animal grazing allowed in February and March, September and November. What's happened to October? And again, just to ask, since when is this normal that when somebody owns a field that you can specify 4 precise months of the year that you're actually allowed to put some livestock onto the field? It seems rather onerous, and we could see from the photographs that the gentleman has fenced it. He spent an awful lot of money and effort doing very, very comprehensive, good, strong, brand new fencing for something in there, and it's not just children, or indeed it more sounds as though it's to keep the animals out. But it was just to ask the officers, that seems incredibly onerous, and was October meant to be in there as well? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Brady, you're correct. October should have been in there. We can amend the description. The reason for the condition was so that the objections raised by the neighbour about the area being used for cattle and the uses not mixing together. I understood from the applicant that he was happy for a condition for it to be used for those months. But if you feel that that condition is more onerous given the existing use of the site, that's can be removed.
If I could just come back on that, it just seems far too precise to name just 8 weeks in the spring, and you're now telling me it's 12 weeks in the autumn, and those are the exact precise only times that he can do it. I think I would assume that he would understand the same as we understand that you know, cattle and sheep feces don't mix terribly well with young children and disabled children. I'm sure he would could use his own discretion about not destroying the surface of the field by putting them in when it's too wet, and not, you know, actually mixing animals up with archers. But I just feel it's a little bit restrictive, and I think, you know, I can see a neighbour looking over the fence if his animals are out on, I don't know, April the 2nd and complaining to the council, and it just seems a little bit onerous, but I'd leave that to the planning officers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm quite happy to support what Councillor Brady has just said in terms of that condition. I do think it can only be used for supplementary grazing when the archery facility is not in use. I don't see a particular need. I don't see it's necessary for this planning application to limit it specifically to months, and on the basis of the conditions needing to be necessary and appropriate. I think that's pushing it too far. I also support the idea of conditioning the electric fence being installed around the field itself. People delete the references to particular months in this condition, and I'm quite happy to propose that. I suspect Councillor Brady is happy to second that.
Yeah.
That said, given what the objector was saying in terms of potential use of loudspeakers or megaphones, I wonder whether you should be conditioning the non-use of amplified voice in this area, because that may well be something that could easily cover the 50 metres and disturb a neighbour. So I'd be happy to take out those months, but add a condition preventing the use of amplified voice.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Brady, I take it you would like to second that. So we have a proposal to remove the specific months from condition 3, but to add in there that that the use of amplified voices would be forbidden. Can I ask if any councillor would be against that alteration to the conditions? I can't see you all in one page. Vivienne, do we have anyone against? No? in which case we will go on to vote on the proposal, but on the basis of the months being taken out and a restriction on amplified.
Sorry, Chairman,
yes.
Mr. Godden would like to speak.
Right, okay, Jerry, please go ahead. You're muted as well.
Yeah. Yes, Chairman, hopefully I'm unmuted now. If members are minded to agree this, we also think a condition would usually be inserted that the framing of the archery net should be painted a dark colour, such as green or black, just so it blends in more with the area, if members would be minded to go with that.
Okay. It seems reasonable to me. Is there any member who does not agree with adding that to the condition? I can't see anyone against that. So we're going to go to a vote then to grant, refuse or abstain with the alterations that we have just agreed. So Vivienne, or is it Jackie going to call the roll?
I'm going to do that, Chairman.
Okay.
Could councillors just say their name and whether they're for the application, against or abstaining, so that the webcast can catch them? Councillor Bedford.
Councillor Bedford for the application. Vivienne, at the end, can I have, before we move on to the next item, can I have 2 minutes to speak, please?
Chairman?
Yes,
right?
It's not on this, it's something urgent that's come up I need to bring to the members' attention.
Oh, right, okay. All right then, that's fine. Yep, please go ahead.
Councillor Bolton.
Councillor Bolton for the application.
Councillor Burrows.
Councillor Burrows for the application.
Councillor Hadley.
Councillor Hadley for.
Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones for the application.
Councillor McIvor.
You're muted. Councillor McIvor, you're muted.
Councillor
McIvor for the application.
That's good, thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Councillor Morgan for the application.
Councillor Phillip.
Councillor Phillip for the application.
Councillor Rolfe.
Councillor Rolfe for the application.
Councillor Stalker.
Councillor Stalker is for the application.
Councillor Vaz.
Councillor Vaz for.
Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Councillor Chris Whitbread for the application.
Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Councillor Holly Whitbread for the application.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse for the application.
Councillor John Whitehouse.
Councillor John Whitehouse for.
Councillor Kesker.
Councillor Kesker for.
Councillor Brady.
Councillor Brady for.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Right, thank you very much indeed, in which case planning permission is granted. Before we move on, Councillor Bedford wish to make a statement or to give us some news?
Thank you. Yeah, this is for officers really. Could some officers, including Mr. Godden, please contact Sue DeLuca urgently, as gypsies have just moved onto the site at Thornwood Village Hall?
Yes, councillor, I will. However, if it's owned by the parish council, they will be legally responsible for taking the action, and our environmental health unit would have to assist them. It's not actually a planning matter if it's the land's owned by someone else, but I will.
Sorry, Jerry. I'll come off and contact Mandy Thompson in the background. So.
Cheers. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we will now go on to item 10, which is 0524 High House Farm, Stapleford Road, Stapleford Abbots. Before we hear from the officer, I would just say, if ever there was an application that needed a site visit, it's this one. And I will comment later on, but it is a great shame, and we appreciate why this is the case, that we were not able to have a site visit for this particular application. Anyway, which officer is dealing with this?
That will be me, Chairman.
Okay, Jerry, if you would like to take us through.
Right, thank you, members. This is an application on High House Farm in Stapleford Abbots. It's for the construction of 20 new dwellings with associated infrastructure, parking, open space and landscaping. Hopefully this, there we go. So the site is quite a large one with High House Farm close to the Stapleford Road, and then the site of an old agricultural unit, which then was turned into industrial units with a slaughterhouse and other commercial uses. The aerial photograph shows the site quite well. You've got the original farmhouse with a swimming pool outside, and then the area of the former buildings, which have all been demolished, although there's some piles on the site of rubble that's still there. And it's considered that this area is still quite heavily contaminated due to the previous uses, both agriculture and commercial, including the slaughterhouse, as is laid out in the officer's report. The scheme would see new properties at the front of the property, including, I believe, a parish hall, and the main development on the back site here in around a square, with the majority of the houses there, but with other plots at the side here. This is the landscape master plan for the site, indicating where there would be ecological improvements. Clearly, the site, if this were to be granted, would have to be decontaminated. And as you can see from the officer's report, one of the issues here about the decontamination is it's going to cost a considerable amount of money in the region of £200,000. And to pay for that, the development itself would be part of being able to do the land to decontaminate and carry out the various landscape improvements here, as well as providing the housing. So there is a previous extant permission for, I think off the top of my head, it's 8 large houses, which are in red. These would be parking units, not a house. And in yellow is the new houses proposed, whereas there are 8 large units, this would be 20 smaller units, of which 5 would be affordable. This is just some general views of the properties that would be considered to be put on site. This is the current existing farmhouse on the site at the property, at the front of the property. And next we see some general views of the site. This is the swimming pool on the site. We then move to the rear of the site where the previous factory, commercial, agricultural uses were. There's mostly, as I said, it's been demolished. There's some small structures there connected with services such as electricity. On the site, there's large areas of hard stand, as you can see from the aerial photographs. There are some significant piles of debris from demolished buildings and hard stands around the sites, in some of them of some significant height. And you've also got things like, I believe this is a vehicle inspection pit on the site, which hasn't been used for many years, as you can see from the foliage just grown around. And a view to the site looking, from the site across the countryside. So the area of development will be in the red area around the original house and the factory site, and then the green space would be on the rest of the site with the landscape improvements there. And okay, so done this go. So I'll go back to this plan. It's probably the easiest. Firstly, I should point out that on page 25, where it says the application is before the committee and is recommended for approval, contrary to objection from a local council, it's actually the other way round. The words have been transposed. Officers are recommending recommending refusal, but the parish council was supportive of this. But that's why it's before the committee. It's just the wording got the wrong way round. As members will be aware, this site has been before you several times over the last 20 years. As you can see from the planning history, there's been a number of permissions granted up to 2014 for between 7 and 8 buildings, a parish room, etc. An application was then made in 2018 for 27 dwellings, including 7 affordable, which was refused because of its impact on the green belt, on the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation, and on the concentration of affordable units at the front of the site. The officer has looked at this, and there's a comprehensive report before you. We have received some responses. Stapleford Hall Farm have objected in respect of the issue of traffic speeds on Stapleford Road at this point. Unfortunately, this is nothing to do with the council. This is a Highway Authorities Essex County Council matter. And the Parish Council have stated that they advised that they have had extensive consultation with the developers on the proposal, have no objections, and will fully support the application. As you will note, while there is a history up until 2014 of planning applications being granted on the site, the 2018 application was refused. And this was refused basically because of the emerging policies of the new local plan, the submitted version local plan, which were of limited weight at that time, but are now of considerably more weight as the local plan moves towards adoption. And changes in the process of the National Planning Policy Framework. I think probably the easiest way to describe the officer's case, apart from reading the entire thing out, is to go to the conclusion. And the officer has said that the application raises a number of key policy issues around the increased volume of development within the Greenbelt and its impact on the openness and the character of the Greenbelt. And additionally, the primacy of the local plan, and the local plan, the submitted version, did not look at this any further once the contamination issue was realised, and this is not an allocated site for development within the new local plan, partly because of that and partly because it is outside the settlement of Stapleford Abbots. However, this has to be balanced in any assessment against the unusual site circumstances arising from the historic contamination, which has been adequately investigated and requires such extensive remediation that the previously approved developments would not support this. These issues are only likely to be resolved as a result of a redevelopment of a more intensive level. However, this may be of a lower level than is currently proposed, but reduction may require other compromises in terms of the 106 or Section 106 offer made against the current proposal. Officers recognise the issues in this case are very finely balanced. In coming to a view, members must determine how much weight to give the very special circumstances of the application, as set out above in the report. However, in arguing the case, the applicants have not raised any new issues that members were not previously aware of when determining the previous application. And that was the determination there, was that the harm to the Greenbelt caused by that scheme outweighed all other matters. Given the overall level of development remains more intensive than the approved development, officers have concluded the harm to the Greenbelt remains the primary issue in this case, and the lack of visual breaks in the development does not adequately resolve the Greenbelt concerns. Additionally, the more advanced stage of the submitted version local plan supports far greater weight being given to the unsustainability of the development in the context of policies SP2 and P2. So therefore, in light of this, the recommendation is for refusal for the reasons laid out. I think probably if I stop there and once we've had the presentations, I'll be able to answer any questions members have.
That would be fine. Thank you very much. We have two speakers. Our first speaker is Councillor Jane Jackson of Stapleford Abbots Parish Council. 3 minutes, please.
Good evening, Chairman and committee members. I represent the parish of Stapleford Abbots here this evening and ask for your full support and recommendation for this proposal from all members of the committee. High House Farm has a planning permission currently for 7 large dwellings on this site. It was previously the old fat rendering farm plant. This is not a Greenbelt site, it's a PDL site contaminated, very unsightly and at risk within our village. The applicant is presenting a scheme to replace the existing permission upon the site, which we feel as a parish is a more viable and suitable development within Stapleford Abbots, making smaller homes available within our community to assist families who cannot afford the larger homes that are given permission and are being built locally. Please see the notes provided in details on this application, as I ask all members to please consider these notes and fully understand the site. The applicant has gone to great lengths to address the points raised by the last committee in detail, and I ask for your support here this evening upon viewing the notes attached to this application. This application is within the same area of the existing build that has been granted. The new application will result in more affordable, smaller housing needed within our village, a scheme that differs from a large mansion house that houses which are currently being approved. This new scheme sympathetically blends into the surrounding area, removing all unsightly problems, clears up the contamination risk that has been existed for many years, and preventing any chances of travellers conveying into the openness of the site. This application is granted. This application is granted to give the community a heart in the centre of the village from the quality of the housing design, with the added benefit of the parish hall within the centre of the Stapleford Abbots on a piece of land that has been at risk of misuse for many years. This will allow our community to come together in numerous projects and support families within our area, as it will be directly opposite the opposed application site, allowing the hall to raise funds for community projects and used by the local school for projects and for the elderly community. On the wider aspect of the remaining land, the area around the Postfield site, approximately 30 plus acres, is available to be used by the Stapleford Abbots community for a wildlife meadow and to connect our footpaths for the health benefits within our community. I could list many more reasons why we as a parish are supporting this application. The last recommendation from the EFDC was for a greater number of homes, 27 recommended for approval for full support from EFDC. The same officer refusing the application due to the last committee's refusal. Please note the middle of the officer's report stating the benefits of this application before dismissing my request for support this evening. I ask on behalf of our community and the parish for the full support of the committee here this evening. The site now needs your support for the change of direction to allow our community within Stapleford Abbots to benefit and move forward.
Okay.
Okay.
You have had your 3 minutes, Councillor Jackson. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Michael Calder, who is the applicant's agent. You also have 3 minutes, Mr. Calder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I'm from Phase 2 Planning, speaking on behalf of Mrs. Fountain and Stonebond Properties. This application proposes redevelopment of a derelict, previously developed site in the Greenbelt that's failed to deliver any public benefit because of the substantial costs associated with remediating this despoiled and contaminated land. However, this proposal will decontaminate the land and secure significant public benefits. Your officers have identified this case as finely balanced, which is significant because officers previously recommended approval of 27 homes on this site. Further, there are significant material differences in this application that, in our view, tip the balance in its favour, and I'll highlight some of these now. Firstly, your officers previously agreed that the historic site uses and the commenced planning permission for 7 mansion properties on this site should be given considerable weight, and this cumulatively came together with other matters that are still present in this application to provide very special circumstances, but your officers no longer give this weight without justification. Your officers also previously explained that the remediation of this contaminated site is in the public interest and was considered sufficiently unique and exceptional to meet the test of very special circumstances. Officers no longer advise this to be the case without justification. We found other inconsistencies, such as the weight to be given to landscape, ecology, and community benefits compared with the previous recommendation. Officers previously advised that there were very special circumstances to support 27 dwellings on this site, and this application seeks only 20 dwellings and will therefore reduce the impact on the Greenbelt alongside new material considerations, such as an enhanced financial contribution to meet the full cost of constructing a new parish room, when previously the contribution met only part of the cost. There is provision of an additional 30 acres of publicly accessible green space, providing new amenities to the village. This will be secured through a Section 106 agreement containing provision for its future management. This is not to be confused with a SANG, which is not required by this development. Electric bikes are also proposed for residents and broadband coverage. It's therefore disappointing that officers would prefer to see the historic proposal for 7 mansion dwellings built instead. The extent permission will not meet the needs of your residents struggling to find starter, family homes and affordable housing. The extent permission provides no affordable homes, but this proposal provides 5 affordable homes to be delivered by one of your local partners for families on your waiting list. This proposal is consistent with policy SB2 because it is previously developed land. Your officer's report also confirms that a payment of a contribution will address any impacts on air quality in line with your interim strategy. We therefore hope that members will agree that there are significant benefits representing very special circumstances to pass a resolution to grant planning permission this evening, subject to conditions in a Section 106 agreement. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, the recommended decision is to refuse permission.
Chairman?
Yes?
Sorry, could I just come in quickly? In the first speaker said that the site wasn't a greenbelt site, but it was previously developed land. That's not correct. The site is previously developed land, that's agreed, but it is wholly within the greenbelt.
Okay, thank you very much. I have to say, having seen it, it looked a bit, when I was there, it looked a bit like Berlin at the end of the war when the RAF had visited it a number of times. And I would have thought any improvement there would be well worthwhile in the green belt. But anyway, Councillor Brady, I believe you are the ward councillor. If you'd like to start.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, I think we have to ascertain what the difference is here between us refusing it 2 years ago for 27 houses and why we might want to pass it today, propose that it's accepted today. The big difference, the overriding difference is that I hadn't done a site visit before. The overriding difference is that none of us had done site visits before. And this came before us sort of a bit unprepared, suddenly 27 houses in, as Mr. Godden has pointed out, a greenfield site. And my knee-jerk reaction at the meeting was to say, no, too much, too much. And I and Mr. Phillip, I think, helped persuade the rest of the committee against the officers were recommending acceptance of 27 houses last time. And I managed to help persuade the committee to go against the officer recommendation and turn it down. I then did a site visit some 2 weeks later and couldn't believe what I saw. It is a huge site. It is a vast site of concrete, of tarmac, of hard standing, of smashed up buildings all heaped together. It's had, it's had fat rendering sites there. It's unbelievable. I was not expecting anything on such a scale. I really, really wasn't. And I was so upset about my decision and what had happened at the last time, because something needs to be done with this site. You've got that huge area of hard standing there, which is always at risk of sometimes other people moving onto it and doing other things with it. So to go through the reasons for refusal, as I say, okay, it is officially in the green belt, but you've never seen a more brownfield site in all your life if you do actually visit it. Now, it is officially outside the village envelope. So when Stapleford Abbots was being looked at in the local plan and deciding which bits was potentially suitable for development, it is outside the village envelope by only a few hundred meters. It's the next land parcel up. And I think some of you may have been sent some papers by the gentleman, Mr. Calder, who's just spoken, where it showed a map of all the different surrounding properties that had got permission for 6 houses, 8 houses, 9 houses. I mean, the format of Stapleford Abbots was lots of little horticultural holdings, I guess, with large yards, which have now got permission, quite a few of them, for little clusters of houses to be built. And this one is bigger than any of the others, I can tell you, the stuff there. Now, the other reasons for, so it's only a few hundred meters outside the village envelope, so close as anything. It abuts the main road going through, which is the main road with a bus service, with a good comprehensive bus service. So it's very close to that. it is way, way nearer Stapleford Abbott's junior school, primary and junior school, way nearer than the rest of the village. It is so close to both and to the village hall. It's really close to the village hall, really close to the school, much closer than the rest of the village, and it's closer to the church than the rest of the village as well. It's got one pub that it's closer to than the rest of the village. Admittedly, it's further away than the pub in the centre of the village, but there's another pub that it's closest to. So if you're looking for sustainability, it's got all those things around it. What else could be done with this site? Well, I believe it was for sale for years with the potential for those 7 mansions on it, and nobody would touch it. 2014, I think, was that application, because it's going to cost so much to decontaminate, 200,000 odd. So it needs a reasonable size of development in order for that to be decontaminated. Just going through my notes here. I think the fact that it's been knocked back, the developer and the owner have really tried very, very hard to account, to mitigate the problems that we had last time. So it's gone down from 27 to 20, including 5 affordables. And last time we weren't quite happy because all 7 affordables were rowed up on the side of the road on real greenbelt land. And so this time they've mixed the affordables in. We've got full support of the parish council, who've been very, very worried about this site and what might happen to it if it isn't redeveloped. You've seen it's a genuine site that's genuinely had all sorts of businesses and things go on over the years. I think anybody who has seen the site would possibly come to a similar conclusion as myself. Any more things for me to say? 1 or 2 things. Yes, and the officers say on page 36 at the bottom, officers recognise the issues are very finely balanced. In coming to a view, members must determine how much weight to give to the very special circumstances. Well, I would say we should follow the local plan generally. That's what it's there for, that we do generally follow it. But if you just followed it totally, there wouldn't be any point in us having a committee. And I think this is one of those very special circumstances where the village are fully behind it, which is rare in Stapleford Abbots. They don't normally want development, but they really do want it here. So I would like to propose recommending approval of the application against the advice of the officers. Thank you.
Thank you
Do I have a seconder for that?
Do I have a seconder?
You do.
Right,
Councillor
thank you.
Rolfe.
That's Councillor Rolfe. Thank you very much indeed. We will have to take a vote on that. Before we do go on, I noticed something was marked as a swimming pool in the photographs. It's actually a weighbridge, which is still there, I think. Another piece of industrial detritus.
Sorry, I think the swimming pool's with the house, Mr. Kesker, and the weighbridge is at the back.
Yes, I think that's right, but I think the photograph wasn't. It didn't strike me as being a swimming pool. Just before we go ahead, I've got Councillor Bedford has got his hand up. Would you like to say anything before I go on to this proposal?
Just to say that I appreciate, obviously, with the local plan and everything going forward, and on page 36, on the second line down on the last paragraph, we have to give specific weight to very special circumstances to the application. I must say that when I started reading this and I looked at all the paperwork that's been sent through, I was concerned. So I therefore went and visited the site yesterday. I drove into the site. The gate had been left open. And on driving in the site, I was amazed at how large the site was. And when you drive up the road and into the site itself, it's surprising. The photographs we've seen tonight don't do it justice, in as much as that the whole site seems to be surrounded by rather large trees as well. So there are 2 aspects from the top of the site that actually look down across the fields. It's very limited visionary. So the impact on the greenbelt, if we've looked on the same paragraph and we talk about the 7/8 houses that were proposed initially, if that had gone through, that's exactly the same impact on the greenbelt as what we're considering tonight, regardless of the fact that it's now 20 houses. And looking at that site, it can accommodate 20 houses quite nicely. I must admit that taking everything into account, I think that this being a brownfield site, the level of contamination, this is going to be a way of clearing up the mess that somebody previously has left there. And it's a good way of actually making good use of the land. It will have good links to the local village communities. And I must admit, driving down the main road there from the Passingford Bridge all the way up and then down the other side, I've never seen a road with so many bus stops on. So they're literally every 100 yards down that road. It's surprising when you look into what the amenities are, what you can actually find when you look for it. Overall, I think that the special circumstances on this particular one, of it being a brownfield site, but within the green belt, we could acknowledge that. And I think that I fully support the application, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much. I did have one query, and that was, we talk about the village envelope, but the village envelope doesn't appear to include the school, the church, or the other houses further up the hill, of which there are a considerable number. So I can't actually understand that one. But nevertheless, we have Councillor Phillip. Would you like to speak next?
Thank you, Chairman. And a couple of things to take issue with. I have to contradict Councillor Brady. I had actually gone and seen this site before we discussed it last time, and indeed before it was discussed, I think, at District Development Management as well. So I am fully aware of this site. I do understand everything's been said. I would have picked up what Mr. Gordon said, that it is actually a greenbelt site. I don't know, because I don't take the buses around there, whether all those bus stops are actually served. So it's actually the buses, not the bus stops, that are the key part, Councillor Bedford. I do understand the balance, but when I look at the built form on a site compared to what actually was proposed and approved before, I actually find myself coming down on the other side. I think the impact on the greenbelt is still sufficient, that I will not be supporting the revised proposal.
Okay, thank you. There was one thing I noticed, that under reasons for refusal, there is a note that there hasn't been yet a completed legal agreement with regard to Section 106 money, and I'm going to suggest, if members are agreeable, that when we go to a vote on the proposal to grant permission, that would be including a condition that before work is started, a legal agreement must be completed to deal with Section 106. I think, Jerry, you'd like to speak on that?
Chairman, you have to have the legal agreement in place before you grant permission, not before you start building. I would also hope that the officers, given that this was called out as a balanced decision, may actually have a list of conditions that they would like to propose as part of the proposal to grant. I think we should hear Mr. Gordon on that one.
Jerry?
Hello.
Hello, Jerry. Yes, I believe you're on.
Ah, yes. Councillor Phillip broke up slightly to me, and apparently my internet connection's a bit unstable for some strange reason. I was just going to say clearly, if members were minded to overturn the officer's recommendation, this would need to go to DDMC, as it's a departure from policy, and Councillor Phillip is right that it would be subject to granting permission once a Section 106 was signed, just to make those both clear.
Okay, that's fine. Do we have, yes, Councillor Rolfe? Unmute.
Is that better?
Yes, I can hear you now.
It says unmuted already, but I'm sorry about the previous incident, but everything disappeared. Can I say that when I went to see this yesterday, I realised that Heather had approached me about looking at it and seeing how I felt about it, and I was absolutely appalled. Everything she said was 100%. and I go along with Councillor Bedford. He's also come in. One thing I would like to say is it's all very well talking about the rules, and I appreciate that what John and Councillor Phillip and Councillor and Mr. Godden have said. But having said that, we've got to look at it in some ways and do our best to get something through, because this is an absolute blot on the landscape. Nobody is going to come. It's going to stick in the green belt if we don't approve it, and nobody is going to. People just not going to spend that money on getting ground. Developers won't want to know too much about spending the sort of money we're talking about earlier to actually get the land decontaminated, and that blot is going to stay there. But it could be, I don't know how long it goes before it's considered to be safe, but it certainly could go on the next 100 years. And it is appalling there. It really is. And the thought of all that and it's a pretty countryside round there. You can't argue about that. But that is an absolute disgrace. It's still there in that state. I don't know how it was allowed and what's happened in the past, but I do think we've got to take the opportunity to do something about this, because it is just, anybody who's seen it, and I'm sorry that not everybody apparently went to see it, but and I did it on my own separately, so I was nobody there, and yet I agree 100% with the people who've already spoken who've seen it.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, you're quite happy that we vote on a proposal to grant, but without a separate comment about Section 106 agreement?
Well, if you wish to vote if members wish to vote to grant it, you'd need to grant subject to the signing of a Section 106.
Okay,
as
so
normal.
the wording would be granted subject to the grant. Would be subject to the agreement.
Yeah, agreement of a Section 106.
Is everyone clear about that?
Section 106 agreement.
Yeah.
If I might.
Yes.
I suspect there are other conditions that should be applied to this as well. Given that Mr. Godden has said that if it does get passed, it will have to go to DDMC. Can I suggest that those conditions are put in place and added to the report before it goes to DDMC, including the Section 106? But I suspect there's other things like hours of operation and wheel washing, etc., that would normally need to be added. But there's no point discussing that tonight if it's going to DDMC anyway.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, we have already got a list ready to go of extra conditions as well, and what the Section 106 would be dealing with as well.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. I think then we can actually go to a vote. So let me make clear, we are for approval, against approval, or abstaining. And Vivienne, would you, or Jackie, who's going to do this? Vivienne?
I'll do it.
Right, it's Vivienne, if you'd call the roll, please.
Okay, before I start, I'd just like to say, Councillor Jones, I think you went out of the meeting, so I won't be calling you to vote.
No, that's absolutely. I apologise, Chairman. I did have to temporarily, very briefly leave the meeting. I was going to intend abstaining if I had been called to vote anyway.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
Councillor Whitehouse has her hand up, Chairman.
Oh, yes, Councillor Whitehouse. Janet Whitehouse.
We're voting for or against the change to against refusal, are we?
No, we are yes, we are voting for approval to build the houses as listed in this in the paperwork.
Okay, thank
you. So if you vote for, it's to build those 20 houses. All right, that's clear. Okay, Vivienne, if you'd like to call the roll then.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Councillor Bedford for approval.
Councillor Bolton.
Councillor Bolton for approval.
Councillor Burrows.
Councillor Burrows against approval.
Councillor Hadley.
Councillor Hadley for approval.
Councillor McIvor.
Councillor McIvor for approval.
Councillor Morgan.
Councillor Morgan for approval.
Councillor Phillip.
Councillor Phillip against approval.
Councillor Rolfe.
Councillor Rolfe for approval.
Councillor Stalker.
Councillor Stalker is against the approval.
Councillor Vaz.
Councillor Vaz, for approval.
Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Councillor Chris Whitbread, abstain.
Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Councillor Holly Whitbread, for approval.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse, for approval.
Councillor John Whitehouse.
John Whitehouse, for.
Councillor Kesker.
Councillor Kesker, for approval.
Councillor Brady.
Councillor Brady, for approval.
Chairman, that is 12 for approval, 3 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. In which case, this committee has approved the application. We understand that it will be going to district development, however, but we have approved the application. Councillor Bedford, you've got an electronic hand.
Yes, I've just put my hand up very briefly. I think it would benefit DDMC if actually a drone footage was taken of the area, if that's possible, please, from the planning team.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, I don't know whether that is possible, but you have a request there that you.
Yes, we will be able to do that. Depends when the next DDMC meeting is, though, because obviously it would take a couple of weeks to organise, but we can get that done.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed. We now go on to item 11, which is 1656 Maltings Farm, Church Road, Malton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to get the presentation up. Okay. Yes, right. So yes, thank you. This is Maltings Farm. This site was before members several months ago, where it ended up going to District Development Committee, where it was refused. The scheme itself is for the reserve matters to an application in 2018 for the removal of the outbuildings in existing dwelling, erection of 3 detached dwellings, and formation of new highway access and ancillary works. So the original planning permission was granted, but it reserved the various matters of detail and scale, etc., that would be built of the 3 properties on the site. The site to the back of the site in the blue line area has been developed into 2 separate houses, were not part of this particular application. So the site in question will see the demolition of this building here and the erection of 3 detached houses in this area here. And as I said, the area to the back is a separate site, but it has been developed as well. The scheme will see the 3 houses set back some distance from the actual main road, replacing the original house on the property there in that area there. These are the buildings, a type A and type B building, 2 of type A, 1 of type B. This is the current application form. This was a scheme refused at DDMC in 2020. On first look, there doesn't appear to be too much difference between the buildings, but there are changes to the layout, the width of the building into and roof accommodation as well. So the buildings have been reduced in scale from what was previously refused in 2020. These are the internal floor plans showing the properties. All 3 buildings are 3-bedroom properties, which will become significant in a minute as we go through this. This is the tree and landscape plan where various trees will be removed, and that's been agreed by our landscape team. Then this is the street scene. These are the existing properties. And these would be the new 3 houses built on site with appropriate trees and screening. This was the previously refused scheme, and this perhaps shows the difference in house design and scale, because you can see far more easily on this particular slide how this is what is now suggested, and that was what was now brought forward. So you can see there has been a reduction in the scale of the buildings from the previously refused scheme. This is the current house on site that will be demolished. Another view of it. And the site itself looking towards the rear of the property and then towards the rear left of the property. And another view of the actual property itself. If I go back to this, probably. So these, I think I'll leave it on that one. That's probably the best one. We have received comments on this application. So we have received 3 objections. Scott Farm have objected. It's an overdevelopment of the site, dwellings out of character of the area, detrimental impact on highway safety, and does not conform to the neighbourhood plan. One Maltings Hill, an objection on very similar grounds, not conforming with the neighbourhood plan, out of character with the area itself and the road safety. The Parish Council have objected. The Parish Council objects as it does not comply with policy MBL 1.1 of the Malting, Bobbingworth and the Labour's neighbourhood plan, which forms part of local planning policy, and states that new open market housing developments should predominantly comprise 1 or 2 bedroom houses. The Parish Council has noted the reduction of the footprint size of the proposed dwellings in this revised application, but it is nonetheless still for 3 large 3-bedroom houses. Parish Council is still in dispute with Epping Forest District Council's legal opinion regarding the neighbourhood plan, and this to date has been subject of a Step 1 and a Step 2 complaint, and has not been resolved to the satisfaction of the Parish Council. Parish Council will therefore reiterate that Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 states that the determination must be made in accordance with the policies in the development plan as at the date of the reserved matters application, and the argument that because outline planning permission has been granted, the neighbourhood plan is not valid or outweighed conflicts with the wording of Section 38(6). It is not correct to describe the existence of the outline permission as an exceptional circumstance that justifies outweighing the relevant and more recent policies in the adopted neighbourhood plan. There is no legal basis for such an approach, and if uncorrected at the time of the decision by members, it will seriously mislead the members, with the resulting decision to approve, if that was transpires, may be tainted by illegality. All the outline permission has done is approve the principle of the development, but it does not, and it cannot, as a matter of law, predetermine issues that the applicant has chosen to leave undetermined until the reserved matters stage. Section 38(6) is clear, and it applies to any determination which is required to be made under the Town and Country Planning Act and includes a determination on reserved matters applications. In the circumstances, it is inappropriate a decision is taken which may be tarnished by illegality, and the Parish Council requests that any discussion is deferred until the definitive legal position is accepted by all parties. So clearly, members, the Parish Council have got legal issues as they've raised, and I believe they'll be speaking as well. Officers have looked at this, and there has clearly been a change from the previous scheme. I will come back to the legal issues at the moment, but if we go through the other issues, Essex Highways are happy with the access to the site. The officers have got no concerns with the appearance and character of the buildings and their design. Again, the landscaping and layout is acceptable. One issue is the scale. When this went to DDMC after the last refusal, members eventually did refuse the planning application on the scale of the buildings, not the number of bedrooms, but the scale of the buildings. So this has been looked at by the applicant, and they've come back with a lower scale of buildings. The total volume calculation for the buildings originally was 1,309 cubic meters, and the proposed for this new scheme is 1,154 cubic meters. So there has been a reduction there, and that would be welcome, and to reduce it in line with the District Development Committee's decision last year. So from an officer's perspective, there's no significant reason why we shouldn't grant planning consent for this. The main issue does appear to be the issue of procedural and legal matters, and this is laid out by the officer at page 45 and 46. We have taken as a district council legal advice, and that legal advisor did attend the district development committee meeting and gave advice to the committee on that matter, and that advice is relevant here. The section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act basically says that the
We seem to have lost Jerry for the minute.
I think he said he was unstable, Chairman.
I think
perhaps I can take over then.
Yes, please, Andrew, if you would, please.
I'm back. If that.
Oh, you're back. That's fine. We got as far as the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act, and then we lost.
Oh, right. So I didn't. Oh, right. Excellent. So, yes, rather frustrating. My internet connection again appears to be weak for some reason. I have no idea why. However, so to recap, the council has taken legal advice, and we've had a legal opinion in writing from our advisor. And we had a lawyer attend the last district development committee meeting. The advice that we got, to summarise, was basically that under the Act, we must make a decision in accordance with the local plan. The local plan consists of several elements, and we should use the most up-to-date local plan or plan where possible. If one exists, that is the primary plan. In this case, out of the adopted local plan, the submission version local plan, and the neighbourhood plan, the most recent and adopted plan is that of the neighbourhood plan for Maltingworth, Bobbingworth, and the Lavers. So that clearly is the primary plan. Is first amongst equals, if I can put it that way. And we don't dispute that the neighbourhood plan is part of this. Part of what has to be considered here, and it is clearly the most up-to-date plan. However, officers and our legal opinion was also that the outline planning consent was and is a material planning consideration, and in this instance should be given significant weight. It's considered furthermore that this is frankly a fairly unique situation. It's very unlikely that we will come across a similar situation where we have an outline planning permission granted on a certain date, and then after that a local neighbourhood plan comes into effect, and the plan policies conflict to some or greater or lesser degree to the actual application itself. Now, in this case, it is also noted by officers that the neighbourhood plan does make it quite clear that they want the predominance of 1 and 2 bedroom plans. And that's absolutely accepted by the council. However, that doesn't mean there is a complete and utter exclusion of 3, 4 or 5 bedrooms that could be built. A preponderance is not a complete negation or prohibition on such buildings being built. In this case, the planning permission was granted prior to the neighbourhood plan being adopted, but the neighbourhood plan is the most recent plan, and as I said, that is accepted. But the officer's opinion and the legal opinion of the officer that we have taken as well is quite clear that it's a material planning consideration that there was a permission granted before the adoption of the most up-to-date local plan. And that material planning consideration would justify a grant of permission in this instance, especially as the scale of the buildings has been reduced. The District Development Committee accepted this legal advice because when they refused the scheme previously, it was on the basis of the scale of the buildings, not on the legal issues. We note with respect the position of the parish council. I'm afraid, though, in many things, it's not unusual to have 2 or even 3 differing legal opinions, and the council is happy to stand by its legal opinion. This does not negate or cause a precedent or override in any significant way the use of the neighbourhood plan. It just means in this case there are some strange and unusual circumstances, and the material planning consideration of the previous application being granted, in the opinion of officers, justifies the grant of this permission. So our recommendation is to approve.
Thank you very much indeed. We have two speakers. Our first one, and I must thank both of our speakers for waiting patiently, but our first speaker is Julia Milovanovic, the Town Clerk for Moulton, Bobbingworth and the Labour's Parish Council. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Members of this committee will have received an email from the Parish Council yesterday afternoon drawing their attention to the incorrect description in the officer's report, which the officer has already referred to. This was particularly relevant, bearing in mind the previous reason for refusal was overdevelopment in the Greenbelt. The failure to correctly describe the site, particularly in the current absence of site visits, is somewhat misleading. However, hopefully councillors will now have a better understanding of the location and surrounding area from the photographs. It is of concern to the Parish Council that something as relatively simple as the description of the site has been incorrectly described by the officer, and this indeed calls into question whether other facts and advice contained within the officer's report are indeed correct, and in particular, the legal advice provided to members relating to our neighbourhood plan. Members will recall that the Parish Council questioned this advice when the application was discussed here, at this committee and also at DDMC. And subsequently we disputed the validity of the advice by following both stages of the formal complaints procedure, as has already been referred to. The final outcome of the complaint was, not surprisingly, that it was not upheld. The EFDC did acknowledge that they could have done things better. The Parish Council, as has already been acknowledged, was very unhappy with the outcome of this complaint, and as a result, it has now been referred to Robert Jenrick, the Minister for Communities, Housing and Local Government, so that a definitive decision can be given on this matter, which will clarify the position regarding our neighbourhood plan, not just for this application, but for any future different applications with similar issues. If it had not been for the current pandemic, we would have already received a full response. However, when it was noted that this application was due to be discussed this evening, I contacted Mr. Jenrick's office and yesterday was advised that we should hope to receive a full response within the next 28 days. In view of this, I would ask members to defer making any decision on this matter until we have heard from the Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we'll go ahead with Mr. Smallwood, who's the applicant's agent, and then I will put the question of deferring to the committee. So, Mr. Smallwood, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. Just on the question of the neighbourhood plan, the applicant did actually pay for legal advice from a Mr. John Dagg, who's a barrister and a chartered town planner. I'd just like to make reference to John Dagg's comments. He says the policy in the neighbourhood plan can be applied properly to new applications for plan permission. Such applications, as a matter of statute, Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 and Section 72 of the 1990 Act, must be determined having regard to the development plan. However, the Act and the 2015 order do not provide that applications for reserved matters have to be reconsidered again in the light of the development plan. I think obviously the council has made their mind up about which way to go on that issue, but as I say, because the clients actually paid for the advice, I think it should be mentioned. This is the second application for approval of reserved matters. The first application, which is also recommended for approval, was refused by the committee on the basis of scale and the impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. The committee at the time were unable to advise what reduction in scale, if any, would be acceptable. Instead, they deferred to the planning officer. Bearing in mind that the planning officer had recommended the application for approval, it is perhaps understandable that when we sought guidance, we were advised that he was unable to comment on what reduction the committee might consider acceptable. The committee appears to object in principle to the grant of the outline consent. For the revised proposal set out in the application, we have ensured that the scale does not exceed that of the outline planning consent. The applicant is not prepared to reduce the scale any further, as this would reduce the benefits to which he is legally entitled under the outline consent. As John Dagg states in his advice, It is not open to the planning authority to reduce the scope or modify the terms of the grant at reserved matter stage. While conditions can be imposed, they cannot lawfully derogate from the grant of permission. It must be within its scope. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. I have Councillor Phillip has his electronic hand up. Would you like to start?
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, I think it's really unfortunate this application has descended into a whole chunk of legal arguments, most of which I think actually probably are not completely relevant to what we're doing. The outline planning permission, which was granted on appeal, I'll note that, against the decision of this committee. So it wouldn't be entirely surprising if we didn't think that was the right decision. But I completely take the applicant's point of view that that's a planning permission that's been granted on appeal. That planning permission was granted on appeal. The reserve matters included the size, scale, and positioning of the houses. As I said at probably this committee, certainly said at District Development Committee, the discussion that we had initially on this application was made very clear. Without an outline permission, the sizes were not allowed to be factored in as a consideration. Therefore, sizes in the outline planning permission do not actually have a bearing on what we actually decide here. We cannot decide not to grant because we don't think 3 houses are appropriate, because that's being granted. What we can do is make a decision on the basis of the things that we do decide to do. I'll also take up the point of the neighbourhood plan. I was very happy as planning portfolio holder to actually bring forward Morton Bournemouth and the Labour's neighbourhood plan to council for adoption as part of our development framework. It was the first one. It's still the first one, and that's a good thing. However, I do know from the amount of work that I spent on our own local plan is that when you have absolutes, you can enforce absolutes, but when you don't have absolutes, then there's a degree of interpretation there. And as was pointed out by Mr. Godden, it's predominantly 1 and 2 bedroom houses. This is 3 houses. That is not a significant amount, so you can be predominantly without these. If these 3 get granted tonight, then obviously that is an impact on the future developments in this area, and the fact that we've already had 3 3-bedroom houses would mean that there's a greater pressure to 1 and 2 bedroom houses going forward. I'll parallel it to our own plan policy, which resists the loss of bungalows. It does not say thou shalt not get rid of any bungalows. It says we resist it. Same way here, it's an intent rather than an absolute. So I think the bottom line of what we're coming down to here is whether the change in the size of these dwellings is sufficient to overcome the reasons for refusal from district development management. I did a little bit of maths on this, as is my wont, particularly now with my new portfolio in being finance. But originally, there was over a 35% increase in the built form on the site compared to what there is there at the moment. That was a significant increase. We're now slightly below 20% in terms of the increase. And as such, I think that the reasons for refusal have been sufficiently overcome. I will support this time, which I didn't do last time, the proposal to grant. I will also acknowledge the existence of the neighbourhood plan and say that in coming to this decision, I have taken that neighbourhood plan fully into consideration in making my judgment and respect their view for predominantly 1 and 2 bedroom houses, but think this, given the other factors, is a reasonable planning application to grant, and therefore I will be supporting it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hadley, I'll go to next, as I think this is your ward.
Yes, indeed, Chairman. Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Phillip. And thank you, Julia, for updating us on the latest situation regarding the Cash for His at the back, where of course the two new houses are. In your objection, you state that any discussion should be delayed until a definitive legal position is accepted by all parties. Around about 6 months ago, I advised you to go to the Ombudsman if you couldn't come to agreement with the District Council. Nothing happened out of that, and now I hear that you've actually gone to the Secretary of State for Housing, who will be coming back within 4 weeks, apparently. I don't know what you've been saying, but if I just disregard that, if I may, for this time, just concentrate on the actual application. When it came up before, I was for it. And looking at it now, I think one of the comments that's made is the neighbourhood plan is in conflict with the local plan. I don't actually see a conflict, because here you state in your local plan, neighbourhood plan, new open market housing developments should predominantly comprise 1 or 2 bedroom houses. That doesn't exclude 3-bedroom houses or 4-bedroom houses, as stated by the officer. So where's the conflict? Is it on the green belt? Well, it's the green belt, but as one of our members stated a few meetings ago, the green belt is the green belt. But my view is there's a few shades of green belts. And our last application was also green belt, but it's more like a rubbish tip. This isn't quite as bad, but it's not an idyllic green field with an oak tree in the middle with a wonderful view over Essex. It's between new houses behind and some old houses at the side. It's well set back, and if anything, I think it will enhance the whole aspect, the street view of this particular area. So, in other aspects, I agree with the officer totally, and will support this application.
Thank Councillor Hadley. Thank you very much. I must say, I think this is likely to be a very unique situation here with regard to the dating of the application originally and now the neighbourhood plan. Councillor Morgan, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, most of it's been said. As we heard, this was granted on appeal. We're really dealing with the reserve matters. The district development, they recommended or suggested they do a smaller development, reduce the size. This they have done, and now it's before us at this meeting. Just one comment. I don't like the attitude of the parish council. They seem as if they're threatening this committee, and that's not what it's all about. But anyway, I'll go along with the officer's recommendation and recommend that we actually grant this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak? I can't see any other hands up. Vivienne, can you see anyone?
No, Chairman.
Okay, in which case we'll go straight to the vote. In which case, if you could state your names and say you are for granting, or you say grant, to refuse, or to abstain. Would you call the roll, please, Vivienne?
Councillor Bedford.
Councillor Bedford, for.
Councillor Bolton.
Councillor Bolton, for.
Councillor Burrows.
Councillor Burrows, for.
Councillor Hadley.
Councillor Hadley, for.
Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones, for.
Councillor McIvor.
Councillor McIvor, for.
Councillor Morgan.
Councillor Morgan, for.
Councillor Phillip.
Councillor Phillip, for.
Councillor Rolfe.
Councillor Rolfe, for.
Councillor Stalker.
Councillor Stalker, for.
Councillor Vaz.
Councillor Vaz, for.
Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Councillor Chris Whitbread, for.
Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Councillor Holly Whitbread, for.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse, for.
Councillor John Whitehouse.
Councillor John Whitehouse, for.
Councillor Kesker.
Councillor Kesker, for.
Councillor Brady.
Councillor Brady, for.
Chairman, it's unanimous for the application.
Thank you very much, in which case planning permission is granted. We now move on to item 12, exclusion of public and press. I take it we have no reason to exclude.
No, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I thank everyone who's helped with our struggles against technology tonight. We seem to have overcome our problems eventually, but it does make you wish we were back in the council chamber, able to have normal meetings. So can I thank you all for your attendance tonight and for taking part, and thank the officers for guiding us through this particular meeting. I now close the meeting at 8:46.
Good night, Chairman.
Thanks, Chairman.
Chairman.